People. I'm Adroit, member of the data science team at the One Center for Energy System Design, offset, which is part of the listener. And today I'd like to share my experience and perspective on the use case of AI for molecular design, especially from the perspective of an experimental camp. There's a quick overview of what we are currently doing in our group. So it includes generative model, lab optimization, and also database. But for today's topic, we are going to focus more on the generative model. And especially in my talk, you will hear more about organic molecules. And if you are more interested on inorganic solids, please join the talk right after me by one of our postdocs, Dr. Adrian. So our target molecule is quite unique. So it's called ionic liquids. It's a salt in a liquid state at room temperatures. And this can consist a lot of various types of cations as well as anions. And many reports have indicated that this material have like many wide range of potential application. It can be used as a solvent in extraction, catalysis, and we can mix it with solid composite to form a material for CO2 capture. We can convert it into membrane for selective separation. And you can also use it for like pharmaceutical application, like drug delivery system and so on. But the main challenge, or you can also see it as an opportunity of working with ionic liquids, is the chemical space of ionic liquids is really big. Let's say this is the entire chemical space, then the chemical space of ionic liquid is quite significant. And what we can actually explore in the lab is very, very limited in this space. And for this presentation, I organized my talk more like a story. So this is a storyline, starting from how we conventionally design new molecule, which relies on chemist intuition, and then starting from several years ago, people started to use machine learning prediction to guide the experimental and also the molecular design, and now we have a very advanced generative model to explore a wider chemical space. And I believe this storyline is also the global trend, but this is also my personal journey because I was originally trained as an experimental chemist, but now I'm a part of the data science community as well. So let's see the story from the first one. So several years ago, this is how we designed new ionic liquids. So it's purely based on our intuition. Out of nowhere, we came up with this structure that we believe this would be very good for metal extraction. And then we synthesized it into lab. And we tested the performance, and it turns out to be very good. At the time, it was the best extractant for platinum, palladium, and rhodium. And we even made an agreement with the chemical company in Japan to manufacture this chemical. And now you can find this ionic liquid in the market. And following this promising initial result, we further developed a more practical technology for industrial application by converting these ionic liquids into a membrane. So at the time, we had a collaboration with Toyota to recover passive group metals from spent automotive catalysts. And after years of optimization, we finally found the best condition to recover platinum, palladium, and rhodium from this waste material that consists of a lot of impurities with very high purity and very high selectivity. But although we successfully designed or invented this useful technology for industry, this took us a very long time. In fact, this is my entire PhD research. And it took like 3 years to optimize all of this process. And I didn't even know if this ionic liquid is really the best structure out there, considering how big is our chemical space. Maybe not. Maybe this is not the best one. So then after that, I graduated. So I saw the potential of machine learning to accelerate the chemical design, especially for our target molecule ionic liquids. So instead of only working with just a few few ionic liquid candidates, we designed more than 100 chemical structures that we believe would be very good for metal extraction. And we made a bit of ambitious target. We want to find like suitable extractants for every metals in the periodic table. And as a proof of concept, we choose these three metals: platinum, lithium, and neodymium. And we wanted our machine learning model to select the best or the most suitable extraction out of these candidates for each of these three metals based on these properties like selectivity and also the eco-friendliness. And this is how we constructed our machine learning model. So because our input feature is a chemical structure, it's a molecular structure, so we decided to use a molecular descriptor based on DFT and Gaussian calculation. So we call it as a sigma profile descriptor. The sigma profile is a charge density distribution on the surface of a molecule, which is very related in the interaction of an ionic liquid to a metal. So we selected this descriptor, and then we took the numerical data as our feature, as our feature for machine learning. And this is how the workflow of our machine learning model. And at that time, we decided to use a very straightforward model, tree-based algorithm like the random forest classifier and the random forest regressor, because our data set was quite small. So we couldn't use neural network in this case because it should be very straightforward model. And this is the accuracy of the classification model. It turns out to be quite good. In the cross-validation set, it was more than 80%. And in the test set, it was more than 90%. So it's a sign of this is not auto-fitting. And then for the regression model, I guess it wasn't the best model out there, but it's just sufficiently good to give us some sense of the level of eco-friendliness of our ionic liquid. And one of the benefits of using straightforward models like random forest is the interpretability is very easy, the interpretation is very easy. So now we can understand the role of cation and anion in ionic liquids. So in the case of metal selectivity, the role of the cation is as important as the anion. But for the case of the eco-friendliness, the role of the cation is much more important than anion. And if you look even closer, which part of the cation is the most important, it turns out to be the hydrophobic parts of the cation that govern the eco-friendliness of ion. And then based on the classification model and also the regression model, we curated like three ionic liquids. For the one is the control to be, and we brought this finding into our lab for synthesis. And this is the synthesis process. I personally did this synthesis for all of them. It wasn't easy, but yeah, finally we successfully synthesized all of them. And this one, this was just a condensation reaction. And this one was quaternization. This one was simply an ion exchange, and this was a metathesis reaction. And then, of course, after successfully synthesizing the ionic liquids, we evaluated the performance in metal extraction, and as expected, as predicted by our machine learning model, and this ionic liquids was very selective to platinum. This one was selective to lithium, and this one was selective to neodymium with a little bit of impurities. But overall, we can say that machine learning is capable of curating the most suitable ionic liquid for metal extraction. And this time we can say that our ionic liquid is better than like 100 the rest of the candidates that we have. Unlike the previous one, we know that it was good, but we didn't know is it better than the other. And then more recently, we have shifted our attention to a generative model because we saw the potential of generative model to do what's called as an inverse design. So starting from the properties will govern the chemical structure. We can ask the AI to design new molecule for us for specific function or application. In this case, we want to design ionic liquids for CO2 capture, for example. And this is how we train our generative model. We prepared three types of data set. Data one is ionic liquid structures unlabeled. Data one is ionic liquid structure labeled with the CO2 solubility value because you want to use it for CO2 capture. And data two is ionic liquid structures labeled with the toxicity level because we don't want our ionic liquid to be toxic. So we want to know the level of toxicity. And for the chemical notation, we decided to use SMILES. So if you have this chemical structure, this is the SMILES representation. And for the basic of our generative model, we decided to use a large language model. In this case, we use GPT-2. And then for the prediction model, we use SMILES. I will explain what is SMILES in the next few slides. So using data zero, this one, unlabeled ionic liquid structure, we fine-tune GPT-2 to be able to generate new ionic liquid structure. And then we train SMILES on data one as our CO2 solubility predictor. And then we train SMILES on data two as our toxicity predictor. And then finally, we did iterative training. So using these two models, we train it like iteratively. So we hope that by doing this, the properties or the quality of the generated structure will be improved after the training cycle. And this is how we usually handle SMILES for language model. First, we did augmentation to improve the number of our datasets. Because if you see this, our dataset is only 3,000. This is actually it's very small for a language model. But we can do augmentation. We can improve the number up to like about 10 times larger by permuting the atom order. And then because this is a language model, of course, we need to do tokenization. And in this case, we use GPT tokenizer, and we handle everything using Python. And the learning curve shows that the learning was quite effective. It only took several epochs. And if we see the test loss distribution, it was around 0.1, meaning that the model can predict the next token, or in this case, the next character. The next character is the next atom in the ionic liquid. So yeah, it's performed quite well. And using this fine-tuned model, we use it to generate about 5,000 new ionic liquid structures in the first cycle. And these are just a few examples of the generated structures. And as a researcher working in this field, I can tell that this structure looks pretty compelling to me. But of course, we need to evaluate the quality of the generated structure more quantitatively, such as using Tanimoto similarity, and then we can see that the distribution of the similarity of the chemical structure in the generated set was quite low, meaning they have big diversity, meaning they are quite diverse. And if we can confirm it visually using UML projection here, and that we can see that the substructures distribution of the generated structures are not localized in a certain region in space, but it was well distributed across the space, which is good. And then we train SMILES, our prediction model. So SMILES is a machine learning tool based on language model, specifically designed for molecules. And this is the pipeline if you are interested in the detail, and this is the neural architecture. It uses mainly like emding, LSTM layer, and then we have the attention layer and the last layer. If you are interested in the detail, we have the GitHub report here, and it was developed by one of our main collaborator at NIMS. So we train a small stage using data one, which is CO2 solubility. So we can predict the CO2 solubility of new ionic liquids now. And then we train it on data two or for predicting the ecotoxicity. So now we can compare the properties of the training and the generated ionic liquids, and they are pretty similar at this moment, at this point. And using the prediction model, we also kind of make a ranking to decide which one is better and which one is better than the other for the generated ionic liquids. So in this schematic illustrative color, if you pick any ionic liquids from this green area, it would be with ionic liquids with very high CO2 solubility and with low ecotoxicity, which is what we want. And if the red one is the opposite, so it's better to select ionic liquids from this green area. And of course, because this is a new finding, new approach, we need to compare it with a more established computational technique. So use DFT and Cosmo to make some simulation just to confirm the trend. We have quite a few details here, but the main point is the trend that was observed by our model is an agreement with the trend that was observed by DFT and Cosmo simulation. So we can fairly trust our model. And then finally, and in the last step, we push our model to the limit by doing the training loop. So at first, we had this training data about 3000, and then we trained our GPT model to generate this set of ionic liquids. And then we took about 50% of the top ionic liquids based on our prediction model and added it to the training data, retrained our model, generated another set, and then we took another 50%, added to the training data, retrain our model, generated another set again and again. It's a loop. And as we can see here, in the 10th cycle, we reach the cumulative generated ionic liquids have reached about more than 50,000. So in this sense, we already explored a very big chemical space, which is one of our goals, to explore bigger and bigger chemical space. And this is the example of the generated structure in the cycles. It looks good, but if we look more closely, we can see that in each cycle, gradually the structure becomes more and more complex. So for our practical application, we decided to use only up to cycle 4. And we can see that the performance, predicted performance of the generated structure was gradually improved over the training cycles, and the synthetic accessibility of the generated structures was pretty similar to the training data, meaning that if we can synthesize the training data, so the training data is all experimentally verified ionic liquid. So if we can synthesize the training data, then we can synthesize the generated structure as well. So yeah, now it's time to bring this finding into the lab. Remember that I'm actually an experimental chemist, so I would be very happy to test this in the lab. Well, let's say we take the top 1000 generated ionic liquids, so we expect this to be very good for CO2 capture. But as you know, synthesis is never easy, so it takes time. We are still working on it. So in the meantime, we have an alternative strategy. So we did a similar research. So we compiled the product catalog from this chemical supplier, Merck, PCI, and then we did similar research to find like the most similar structure available out there to our library of generated ionic liquids. And we found this one with similarity of about 87%. And then we measured the CO2 absorption capacity. And it was really good, actually. In 100 kilopascal, the absorption capacity is about 70 millimole per mole. It's around, which is the level of the best ionic liquid out there. And this is not even our ionic liquid, our real ionic liquid. This is the most similar ionic liquid that we can find commercially. And yeah, we're still waiting for our true ionic liquid to be synthesized and we can test it in lab. So yeah, so to conclude this talk, I would say that the exploration of a chemical space is significantly faster with AI. So from my personal experience, using only experiment, we could only explore a few in a few years, and then assisted by machine learning prediction, we can increase the exploration space, maybe more than 100 in my experience. And using generative AI, we can explore bigger chemical space, more than 10,000 in my case. But of course, it's potentially unlimited. Potentially, we can explore everything. Chemical space depends on how complex our model and how big our training data. But we must note that the exploration space should be relevant in the lab setting. Otherwise, like this structure, nobody can synthesize this structure. The work will be a bit meaningless if nobody can prove your new materials or new molecular structures. I'd like to close this presentation by acknowledging the funding support from GSPS and then Data Science Center at Kyushu University, National Institute of Informatics, our center says, and also one of our main collaborators, Professor Lamba from the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Fajar. The talk is up with questions and comments. Yes.
I was wondering what properties of the ionic liquids you consider for capturing CO2. So is it just based on absorption or also consider selectivity of the material?
Yeah, so at the moment from this study, we just consider the proof of concept actually just two properties. So one is the solubility, CO2 solubility, and the second one is the toxicity of the ionic liquid. Because one of the main critiques to ionic liquid is it's toxic for the environment, so we want it to be toxic. But we can involve as many as properties as we want, as long as the training data is available.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, it's maybe a little bit technical question, but can I ask about the tokenizer you used? And you used GPT tokenizer, is that the default one? And my question is, do you think that tokenizer affects the overall performance?
Yeah. In this case, we use GPT tokenizer. It's the standard tokenizer from Hugging Face, actually. So we didn't modify the tokenizer. So yeah, I think it's better to modify, but at the moment we didn't modify because GPT tokenizer works well with English language, but it's actually not designed for smiles. So yeah, it's better. In the future we're gonna modify GPT tokenizer.
So we just use each symbol as so that's a simplest approach. Right? So if there's some improvement, so if we have to improve that by using tokenizer, very interesting. So
yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?